The kitchen tiles felt cold beneath my bare feet as I stared at the business card in my hand. My fingers trembled slightly, not from the morning chill but from something I couldn't quite name yet. The card read David Morrison, Senior Investment Advisor, Morrison Financial Group, in elegant raised lettering. But 6 hours earlier, when my daughter Jennifer had introduced her husband of 6 months at the family barbecue, she'd called him David Matthews. I set my coffee cup down on the granite counter, the sound too loud in the quiet house. Through the window, Portland's early autumn morning painted everything in shades of amber and gold. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, a knot of unease twisted in my stomach, the same instinct that had kept me vigilant through 30 years of teaching middle school and 8 years of widowhood. Jennifer had been glowing yesterday, her hand constantly finding David's, as they worked the grill together. They'd moved to Portland 3 months ago. David claiming a promotion with his firm had made the transfer necessary. My daughter seemed happy, but happiness, I'd learned, could sometimes blind us to what we needed to see. I picked up my phone and pulled up the text Jennifer had sent last night. Mom, David's meeting with you Tuesday at 2 p.m. about that investment opportunity. It could really help you. Love you. 3 exclamation points. Jennifer never used 3 exclamation points unless she was trying to convince herself of something. The investment opportunity. David had cornered me at the barbecue, his smile a bit too practiced, his handshake a bit too firm. Catherine, I've been analyzing your financial situation, and I have to say, you're sitting on a gold mine. That house of yours? In this market, you could leverage that equity into something that would double, maybe triple your retirement funds in just 18 months. Guaranteed returns of 15%. Guaranteed. That word alone had made every financial advice column I'd ever read flash warning signs in my mind. But I'd smiled politely, asked for his card, and told him I'd think about it. What I hadn't told him was that my modest teacher's pension was supplemented by something else entirely. Something nobody knew about except my lawyer and my accountant. Not even Jennifer. My late husband Frank had been a software engineer, one of the early ones at a little startup that became something much bigger. When he died 5 years ago, he left me with more than memories and his worn flannel shirts. He left me with $4.2 million in carefully invested assets. But I'd kept living simply, kept teaching until retirement, kept driving my 12-year-old Honda. Not out of misery, but out of caution. Frank had always said, money changes how people see you. Sometimes it's better to let them see what they want to see. I'd thought he was being paranoid. Now, holding this business card with the wrong name, I wasn't so sure. Tuesday came faster than I wanted. I'd spent the previous day doing something I never thought I'd do. I drove to a small private investigation firm in downtown Portland that a colleague had once mentioned. The office was above a coffee shop, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a noir film. The investigator, a woman named Sarah Chen, who looked to be in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense handshake, had listened to my concerns without judgment. Name discrepancy is definitely a red flag, she'd said, making notes. Combined with high-pressure investment tactics and the fact that he married into the family 6 months ago, I'd want to look deeper too. Give me a week. I only have until Tuesday, I'd told her. Then I'll work fast. Now, as I arranged tea and cookies on my dining room table, I felt like I was setting the stage for something. David arrived exactly at 2, his BMW gleaming in my driveway like a promise of prosperity. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year, and he carried a leather portfolio that looked expensive. Catherine. He hugged me, and I caught a whiff of cologne that smelled like it cost more than the suit. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this opportunity for you. Please, sit down, I said, gesturing to the dining room table. Can I get you some tea? Just water, thanks. He was already opening his portfolio, pulling out glossy brochures and charts with ascending lines that promised wealth. I know Jennifer mentioned this, but I want to walk you through everything personally. You're family now, and I take care of family. Family. The word felt calculated, placed deliberately like a chess piece. So, David continued, spreading papers across my table like a card dealer, here's what I'm proposing. Your home is worth approximately $650,000 in current market value, and you've paid off the mortgage. That's dead equity, Catherine. It's not working for you. What I can do is help you secure a reverse mortgage for $400,000, and we'll invest that in the Morrison Strategic Growth Fund. It's a private fund, very exclusive, only available to family and close friends of the advisors. I picked up one of the brochures. The returns chart showed a steep upward trajectory. 15% annually. That seems remarkable. In today's market, it is remarkable, he agreed, leaning forward with the enthusiasm of someone selling miracle cures. But that's because we're not limited to public markets. We invest in pre-IPO opportunities. Real estate development. Private equity, the kind of deals the average person never gets access to. And Morrison Financial Group manages this fund? That's right, I'm one of the senior partners. He pulled out another document. This is the investment agreement. Very straightforward. You wire the $400,000 to the fund's account, and we start generating returns immediately. I'm projecting you'll see $60,000 in profit in the first year alone. I picked up the document, scanning it slowly. My hands didn't shake anymore. The unease had crystallized into something sharper, colder. I noticed the fund is registered in Delaware. Tax advantages, he said smoothly, very common for investment vehicles. And the account it's being wired to. I squinted at the routing number. This is a personal account? For just a moment, less than a heartbeat, something flickered across his face. It's the fund's operational account. More flexibility that way. I see. I set the document down carefully. David, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'd like my financial advisor to review this first. Just due diligence, you understand. His smile tightened. Of course, of course. Although I should mention, this opportunity is time-sensitive. We're closing the fund to new investors on Friday. After that, the returns will only be available to existing members. There it was. The pressure, the artificial urgency. I understand, I said, my voice steady. But $400,000 is my security, David. I'm sure you can appreciate that I need to be careful. He gathered his papers a bit too quickly, his movements sharp now where they'd been smooth before. Absolutely. But Catherine, between us? Jennifer mentioned you've been worried about money since Frank passed. This could change everything for you. No more worrying about making ends meet on a teacher's pension. You could travel, enjoy your retirement. Isn't that what Frank would have wanted? Invoking Frank's name was a mistake. A big one. My late husband would have seen through this man in 30 seconds, and he would have protected our daughter from him with everything he had, just like I was going to do now. I'll call you by Thursday, I said, standing up to signal the end of our meeting. After David left, I sat in the quiet of my dining room, my phone already pulling up Sarah Chen's number. She answered on the second ring. I was just about to call you, she said. We need to meet. Today, if possible. An hour later, I was back in that office above the coffee shop, and Sarah was sliding a folder across her desk toward me. Inside were printouts of newspaper articles, court documents, and police reports. Your son-in-law's real name is David Matthew Garrison, Sarah said. He dropped the Garrison and switches between Morrison and Matthews depending on which identity he's using. He's 41, not 33 like he told Jennifer. He's been married twice before, both times to women with assets. The first wife was a real estate agent in Phoenix. He convinced her to invest her commission income in a fund that didn't exist. She lost $200,000 before she figured it out and filed for divorce. He settled out of court. My chest tightened. And the second wife? Dental hygienist in Sacramento. Similar pattern. He claimed to be an investment advisor, got her to take out a home equity loan for $300,000. She started getting suspicious when the quarterly statements looked fake. She filed charges, but he skipped town before the police could arrest him. There's still a warrant out for him in California. I stared at the documents, my daughter's smiling face from yesterday's barbecue flashing in my mind. How long has he been doing this? At least 10 years that I can confirm. Probably longer. He's smart about it. He targets women in transition, widows, divorcees, women who've recently inherited money. He makes them feel special, protected, taken care of. Then he isolates them from family and friends, gets them to trust him with their finances, and takes everything. But he married Jennifer, I said. She's not a widow or a divorcee. She doesn't have significant assets. Sarah tapped another document, but her mother does. Or at least, that's what he thinks. He's been asking around about you, Catherine. Casual questions at the barbecue. What you did for work, how you're managing in retirement, whether you own your house outright. Jennifer told him you were worried about money. My daughter. Sweet, trusting Jennifer who always saw the best in people. She'd inadvertently painted a target on my back. There's more, Sarah said, pulling out her phone. I've had surveillance on him for the past 3 days. He's been meeting regularly with a woman named Michelle Torres. She claims to be his business partner at Morrison Financial Group. But Morrison Financial Group doesn't exist. It's a website he registered 2 months ago. Michelle is his girlfriend. They share an apartment in Lake Oswego under her name. She turned her phone toward me, showing me photos. David and this Michelle woman, sitting close at a restaurant. David and Michelle, kissing outside what looked like an apartment building. David and Michelle, both laughing at something on a laptop screen. Jennifer doesn't know, I said quietly. It wasn't a question. I don't think so. Based on what I've observed, he's careful to keep his 2 lives separate. Jennifer works long hours in marketing. He tells her he's meeting clients or working late. Meanwhile, he's with Michelle, planning which assets to target next. I looked at the photographs, at the documents, at this evidence of a man who had wormed his way into my daughter's life with the sole purpose of stealing from her family. Rage burned in my chest, hot and sharp, but I forced it down. Rage wouldn't help Jennifer. Strategy would. What do I do? I asked. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. You have a few options. You could go to the police with this. The warrant from California is still active. They could arrest him, but that would hurt Jennifer. I said. The scandal. The embarrassment. Her husband arrested for fraud. And if he gets bail, he could disappear before trial. Exactly. Option 2. You confront him directly. Tell him you know everything. Threaten to expose him unless he leaves Jennifer and disappears. But that's risky. Men like him don't like being cornered. They can get dangerous. What's option 3? You beat him at his own game. Sarah's smile was grim. He thinks you're a lonely widow with a house and a pension. Let him keep thinking that. String him along, make him think you're going to invest. Meanwhile, we gather more evidence, we document everything, and when the time is right, we expose him in a way he can't run from. Not just to the police, but to Jennifer. She needs to see who he really is, not just hear it from you. Otherwise, he'll convince her you're trying to control her, that you never approved of him. I thought about my daughter's face yesterday, so happy. I thought about the way she'd looked at David, like he was her future, her security, her partner. If I just told her what I'd found, would she believe me? Or would David's manipulation run too deep? How do we do this? I asked. Over the next week, I became an actress. When David called to follow up on the investment, I expressed enthusiasm but said my financial advisor needed more information. Could he send detailed prospectuses, fund documentation, proof of past performance? He sent me beautifully designed PDFs, all fake. Sarah had them analyzed by a forensic accountant, who confirmed that the numbers were fabricated and the bank statements were doctored. More evidence for our growing file. I invited David and Jennifer to dinner on Friday night. David arrived with flowers and wine, his charm turned up high. Jennifer looked radiant, chattering about a promotion she was up for at work. "Mom," she said as we cleaned up after dinner while David took a phone call in the living room. "I'm so glad you're considering David's investment advice. He's so good at this stuff. Did you know he helped his last client retire 5 years early? His last client, the dental hygienist in Sacramento who he'd defrauded. He seems very knowledgeable," I said carefully. "Tell me, how did you two meet again?" "At that marketing conference in Seattle," Jennifer said, her face lighting up at the memory. "I was having trouble with the hotel Wi-Fi, and he offered to help. We started talking, and he was so easy to talk to, you know? He asked about my work, my life, really listened. When we got back to Portland, he asked me out, and I knew. You know that feeling when you just know? I did know. I'd felt that way about Frank, but Frank had been genuine. David was a performance. I'm happy you're happy, sweetie," I said, and meant it. She was happy. For now. That's what made this so hard. Over the weekend, Sarah called with another update. Michelle Torres filed for a business license 2 weeks ago. Torres Consulting Services. Want to guess what address she used? My address? I guessed. Close. Jennifer's apartment building. Different unit, but same building. They're setting up another fake company. Probably for the next phase of the scam. Once they get your money, they'll create paper trails showing it went to consulting services or management fees. Makes it harder to trace in court. They've done this before. Many times. I found 3 more victims in Oregon and Washington. He's been working this territory for 2 years. The pattern is always the same. Marry someone who gives him access to money, preferably someone with family money they haven't told him about yet. Pressure them or their relatives to invest. Take the money, and when questions start being asked, he manufactures a crisis. Medical emergency, family tragedy. Something that requires him to liquidate assets. By the time anyone realizes what's happened, he and Michelle are gone, and the money's been wired to offshore accounts. How much time before he does this to Jennifer? Hard to say. If he thinks you're going to invest, he might wait, try to get a bigger score. But if you keep stalling, he'll get nervous. He's already pushing the timeline on you. The Friday deadline he mentioned? That's a classic pressure tactic. But if he thinks it's not working, he'll pivot. Maybe claim Jennifer needs money for something. Maybe create an emergency. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about patterns. David's pattern was predatory and calculated. But I had a pattern too. 30 years of teaching had taught me that the best way to deal with a bully wasn't always confrontation. Sometimes it was giving them enough rope to hang themselves. Tuesday morning, I called David. I've made my decision, I told him. I want to invest. Catherine, that's wonderful. His voice was all warmth and excitement. I knew you'd see what a great opportunity this is. When can we meet to finalize the paperwork? Today, if possible. But David, I want Jennifer there too. This is a big decision, and I want her to be part of it. Family decision. Right? There was the slightest pause. Of course. Although typically, investment decisions are kept confidential. Even within families. Securities regulations. You understand. I understand. But this is my daughter we're talking about. I want her to see that I trust her judgment. That I trust you. Would 4 o'clock work? At my house? Another pause. Perfect. I'll bring all the paperwork. After I hung up, I called Jennifer. Honey, I'm going to invest with David. Can you come over at 4? I'd love for you to be there. Oh my God, Mom, really? This is so great. David's going to be thrilled. He's been really hoping he could help you. He feels bad that you've been struggling. Struggling. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I said, I know, sweetie. See you at 4. Then I called Sarah. It's happening today. 4 o'clock. Can you be in position? Already ahead of you. I've got camera setups ready. We'll document everything. Are you sure you want to do this with Jennifer there? She needs to see it. Otherwise, he'll just convince her I'm lying. At 3:30, Sarah texted me. In position. Audio and video recording. Michelle Torres just arrived at Jennifer's building. Thinks she's planning to be David's alibi if something goes wrong. At 3:45, Jennifer arrived, excited and nervous. Mom, this is such a big step. Are you sure you're comfortable with this? I'm sure, I said, hugging her. I trust David. He's your husband, and he's family now. At 4 o'clock exactly, David arrived with his leather portfolio and his practiced smile. We sat at the dining room table. The same table where he'd made his first pitch. Catherine, Jennifer, thank you both for being here. David pulled out the investment agreement, the same document from before. This is a standard investment contract. Catherine, you'll wire $400,000 to the fund account here, and we'll begin building your portfolio immediately. I picked up the document, put on my reading glasses, and began reading slowly. Very slowly. David's legs started bouncing under the table. Everything looks in order, I finally said, but I do have one question. This account number. Can you explain why it's a personal account rather than a business account? As I mentioned before, it's the fund's operational account. More flexibility for the kind of high-return investments we make. Right. And the fund is managed by Morrison Financial Group. But when I looked up your business license, David, I couldn't find Morrison Financial Group registered in Oregon, or Washington, or Delaware, where the fund is supposedly incorporated. The room went very still. Jennifer looked confused. David's smile didn't waver, but his eyes changed. They went flat. Calculating. Catherine, I'm not sure what you think you found, but I also couldn't find any record of your Series 65 license, which is required to provide investment advice for a fee, or your Series 7, which would allow you to sell securities. In fact, when I checked with FINRA, there's no David Morrison or David Matthews registered as a financial advisor at all. Mom, what are you doing? Jennifer's voice was thin, worried. But I did find a David Matthew Garrison, I continued, my voice steady even though my heart was hammering, with a warrant out for his arrest in Sacramento for wire fraud and theft, and another case in Phoenix where he settled out of court for defrauding his ex-wife of $200,000. David stood up abruptly. This is insane. Catherine, I don't know what you think you've discovered, but you're mistaken. Jennifer, we should go. Sit down, David. I didn't raise my voice, but something in my tone made him pause. Or should I call you Garrison? That is your legal name, isn't it? Jennifer, let's go. Your mother is having some kind of breakdown. But Jennifer wasn't moving. She was staring at him, her face pale. David, what is she talking about? You're not a financial advisor? Of course I am. Your mother has been listening to conspiracy theories on the internet or something. We're leaving. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone. I've been listening to this. I played the audio Sarah had recorded. David and Michelle Torres, sitting in a coffee shop 3 days ago, discussing their plans. The recording was crystal clear. David's voice. Once the old lady wires the money, we wait 2 weeks. Then Michelle files the incorporation papers for Torres Consulting. We show that the funds were transferred to pay for consulting services on a real estate development deal that fell through. By the time anyone questions it, we're in Costa Rica. Michelle's voice. What about Jennifer? David's voice. What about her? She'll believe whatever I tell her to believe. She's useful because her mother has money. But she's not the long-term plan. Once we get the $400K, we're done here. Jennifer's face crumbled. No. That's not. That can't be. Jen, baby, that's taken out of context. It's not what it sounds like. Context. I pulled out the folder Sarah had given me and slid it across the table. Here's context. Your husband's real name. His marriage history. The police reports. The warrant. And here I pulled out my phone again are photos of him with Michelle Torres, his girlfriend. They share an apartment in Lake Oswego. Jennifer opened the folder with shaking hands. I watched her face as she read, watched the disbelief turn to shock, turn to devastation. Tears started streaming down her cheeks. You're lying, David said. But his voice had changed. The charm was gone. Now he sounded dangerous. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see her daughter happy. You've always been jealous that she found someone. I hired a private investigator, I said calmly. Everything I'm telling you is documented. The police are very interested in speaking with you about that warrant from Sacramento. In fact, I glanced at my phone where Sarah had just texted, "They're outside right now." David lunged for the folder, but I was faster than he expected. 30 years of breaking up middle school fights had given me quick reflexes. I stepped back, and Jennifer grabbed the folder, holding it to her chest. You married me to steal from my mother? Her voice was barely above a whisper. No, baby, that's not. Don't. She stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. Don't call me that. Don't ever call me that again. There was a knock at the door. Through the window, I could see the police cars. David looked at me. And for the first time, I saw him without the mask. There was no charm, no warmth. Just cold calculation and rage. You think you're so smart. You'll regret this. No, I said. I really won't. The police arrested David at my dining room table. They'd been coordinating with Sacramento PD. And between the warrant and the evidence Sarah had gathered, they had more than enough to hold him. Michelle Torres was arrested at the same time at Jennifer's apartment building, where she'd been waiting in the fake office she'd set up. After they left, Jennifer sat at my table, the folder spread out in front of her, crying. I sat next to her, my arm around her shoulders, letting her grieve for the life she'd thought she had. How did you know? She finally asked. His business card had the wrong last name, and he was too good to be true. Nobody offers guaranteed 15% returns, honey. Nobody ethical anyway. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. He's a professional con artist. He's good at what he does. That's why he's been doing it for years. She looked at me, her eyes red. You were protecting me. Always. Mom, when he said you were worried about money, and you had been struggling on your pension, that's what I told him. I thought I was helping. I thought he could help you. This was the moment. I took a deep breath. Jen, there's something I need to tell you. I haven't been struggling. Your dad left me very comfortable. I've been living simply by choice, not necessity. She stared at me. What? Your father's stock options and investments left me with about $4 million. I have a financial advisor, a good one who's properly licensed. I've never needed David's help, but I couldn't tell you that without knowing what kind of person he was. If I'd told you I didn't trust him, would you have believed me? Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. No, she finally admitted. I would have thought you were being overprotective. I would have defended him. Exactly. So I had to let him show you who he really was. I'm sorry, honey. I know this hurts. You let him think he could scam you. You let him build his whole plan. And then you. She shook her head, a small, sad laugh escaping. Mom, you set him up. I protected my daughter. That's my job. She hugged me then, hard. We sat like that for a long time, in my quiet kitchen, the autumn light fading outside. Over the next few weeks, the full extent of David's operation came to light. Michelle Torres cooperated with police in exchange for a reduced sentence. They'd scammed 11 families across 5 states over the past decade, always staying one step ahead of the law. The money was harder to trace. Much of it already moved through offshore accounts, but the prosecutors were confident they could recover at least some of it for the victims. Jennifer moved back home with me for a while. She filed for divorce, and her lawyer made sure it was airtight. We didn't want David coming back around when he got out of prison, which the DA said would be at least 7 years given all the charges. One evening, about a month after David's arrest, Jennifer and I were sitting on my back porch, watching the sunset. She'd been quiet all day, thoughtful. "Mom," she said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Anything. Why didn't you tell me about the money before? About what Dad left you?" I thought about how to answer. Because money changes things. It changes how people see you, how they treat you. It changes relationships. Your father and I decided a long time ago that we'd live simply, that we wouldn't let money define us. After he died, I kept that promise. I wanted to be known as Catherine, the retired teacher who grows tomatoes and volunteers at the library. Not Catherine, the widow with millions. But you told me now, because you needed to know, and because I trust you. You've always worked hard, never asked me for things you could earn yourself. You married David thinking he was a good man who would be a partner to you. You weren't after his money, and he wasn't supposed to have any. You married for love. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm sorry I didn't see through him. He was good at what he did. That's not your fault. Do you think I'll ever trust anyone again? Yes, I said firmly. Because you're strong, and you're smart. And you learned something valuable. You learned that when something seems too good to be true, it probably is. You learned to ask questions. And you learned that your mom has your back, always. She laughed. A real laugh this time. You really do. You went full detective mode. Former middle school teacher. I've handled worse than David Garrison. That's terrifying and comforting at the same time. We sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned purple, then indigo. My daughter was healing, and that was all that mattered. The money I'd hidden for years had served its purpose. Not by being spent, but by being protected. David had thought he could exploit a lonely widow and her trusting daughter. Instead, he'd run into something he hadn't anticipated. A mother's love, backed by resources and determination. In the end, that proved to be far more powerful than any con.